Hello and welcome back to Inscribed Corpus After the Movements. I'm Moore from Taiwan. When social movements vanish from the headlines, what remains? After the camps are cleared, after the streams go dark, after the hashtags fade, what keeps transmitting? Today, I want to explore a story that stretches from pirate radio stations and independent newspapers to encrypted nomadic communities, blockchain networks, and decentralized media. It is a story about how activists repeatedly build alternative communication systems whenever existing institutions fail to represent them. And perhaps nowhere is this story more visible than in the aftermath of movements like Hong Kong's Umbrella Movement. But before discussing media, we need to begin with an unusual metaphor.
Not the machine, not the network, but the ecosystem.
For much of modern history, technology has been described through the language of progress. New technologies arrive and old technologies disappear, which the story may appear linear. Yet, media scholars have increasingly argued that media resembles an ecosystem, rather than a machine. Sometimes they dominate, sometimes they survive in niches, and sometimes they become extinct. Just as forests contain multiple species struggling for resources, communication environments contain competing technologies, institutions, and social practices. When a particular platform becomes dominant, it imposes its own logic upon society. It shapes how information circulates, how communities organize, even how reality itself is perceived. Today, many of us inhabit ecosystems dominated by a handful of technology corporations. Theirs platforms mediate our friendships, our political conversations, our memories, and our attention. But activists have rarely accepted these environments as inevitable. Instead, they have repeatedly attempted to cultivate alternative ecologies. Long before social media existed, alternative media already flourished. In Britain, pirate radio stations broadcast music and political commentary beyond state control. Independent newspapers challenged established narratives, and community filmmakers documented stories ignored by commercial television. These media were not simply alternative because of their content, they were because of their organization. They experimented with different ways of producing information, different relationships between creators and audiences, and different forms of collective ownership. In many post-colonial societies, alternative media played an even more significant role. Throughout history, communities marginalized by official narratives have built their own media infrastructures, from pamphlets and underground newspapers to community radio and independent documentaries. From this perspective, media became a tool for constructing cultural citizenship, not merely representing communities, yet helping communities imagine themselves into existence. And this tradition continued into the digital era. During the 1999 protest against the World Trade Organization in Seattle, activists created new forms of networked journalism. Then the Independent Media Center emerged as a decentralized reporting infrastructure. It made ordinary participants become reporters, witnesses became publishers. Most importantly, the distinction between audience and producer began to dissolve. For many activists, this felt revolutionary because a new communication commons appeared possible. Beneath these experiments existed another idea. It's autonomy, or more specifically, autogestion or self-management. This concept emerged from worker self-management movements in Yugoslavia and later influenced French radical thought in the 1960s. Thinkers such as Henri Lefebvre envisioned forms of social organization that could operate beyond traditional state structures. As a result, a set of critical questions emerged. Could people govern themselves? Could communities manage their own resources? Could communication systems be organized democratically rather than hierarchically? All of these questions resurfaced repeatedly, no matter in the Paris 1968 uprisings, the workers' cooperatives, or in the autonomous social centers, and consequently, in digital communities. By the early 21st century, activists increasingly sought not merely to criticize existing institutions. Conversely, they attempted to build alternatives. Alternative schools, economies, infrastructures, and media. And this aspiration became visible during movements such as Occupy Wall Street, Spain's 15M movement, and undoubtedly the Umbrella movement in Hong Kong. Each generated temporary autonomous spaces where participants experimented with different forms of collective decision-making. For a brief moment, another world appeared possible. Yet parallel to this narrative, there is another darker story unfolding. During the 1980s, cyberpunk writers imagined futures dominated by corporations, surveillance systems, and technological inequality. High-tech, low-life, massive information networks controlled by powerful institutions. At the time, these stories felt speculative, while today they feel familiar. Smartphones keep us permanently connected. Social media platforms collect enormous quantities of behavioral data. Algorithms increasingly influence political communication. The infrastructure of everyday life is concentrated in the hands of a small number of corporations. Although the cyberpunk future did not arrive exactly as predicted, many of its concerns became reality. Consequently, the question became increasingly urgent. How can individuals maintain autonomy within highly centralized technological systems? And, well, this inquiry led many activists toward cryptography. Encryption is often described as a technical tool, but well, for many activists, it is also a political practice. It is a way of creating spaces beyond surveillance, protecting vulnerable communities, and a way to reclaiming agency. And, well, after the Umbrella movement, these questions became particularly significant in Hong Kong and for the migrants. Activists confronted the limitations of centralized platforms, or so-called media convergence. Many people began exploring decentralized technologies. Among the most influential initiatives was Civic Leica and its broader ecosystem, which sought to support independent creators and grassroots journalism through blockchain infrastructure. And the goal wasn't simply technological innovation, it was institutional innovation. How can communities sustain independent media without depending upon corporate platforms? How can value circulate fairly? And how can information remain accessible? Similar experiments emerged elsewhere, such as platform cooperatives, federated social networks, and blockchain journalism and decentralized autonomous organizations. Each represented an attempt to rethink the relationship between technology, ownership, and democracy. Despite the fact that not all of them succeeded, many encountered contradictions, speculation, technical barriers, and governance conflict. Yet these experiments reveal something important. The desire for autonomy did not disappear after social movements ended. It migrated from occupied streets to digital infrastructures, from physical assemblies to cryptographic protocols, from protest camps to networked communities. Perhaps this is the deeper lesson of media ecology, that media is never merely technology. It is also a struggle over how people relate to one another, who speaks, who listens, who owns the infrastructure, and who benefits from it. Nowadays, the Umbrella movement may have ended. Occupy camps may have disappeared, but many of their questions remain alive. And they continue to persist. In cooperative platforms, in encrypted conversations, in decentralized communities, and in the ongoing pursuit of forms of collective life beyond domination. Perhaps the movements did not disappear. Perhaps they simply rooted underground. You have been listening to Inscribed Corpus After the Movements. I'm Moore. Until next time.